Welcome to Slash Forward. In this video, we'll be looking at the first of many sequels in the Friday the 13th franchise, Friday the 13th Part 2. Let's get to it. We open on a quiet neighborhood where we see some feet walking toward a house. We cut to Alice, our final girl from the prior movie. She seems to be recovering well, living on her own, working on her art, suffering from debilitating anxiety. Speaking of that, she hears some noises, which turns out to be a neighborhood tabby, come to pay her a visit. She goes to grab him a snack from the fridge, but doesn't find anything appetizing, and ends up taking an ice pick to the temple. A conscientious Jason then removes the kettle from the burner. We then cut to a small town outside Crystal Lake. These two young bohemians run to a payphone to call their buddy Ted and get directions. They're momentarily distracted by Crazy Ralph, delivering an important message from God, so you know he's a big deal. Before they finish acquiring instructions, their truck is towed off. They follow the cold-blooded driver around the corner where they find this was just an elaborately orchestrated prank by this lanky bitch. On their way to camp, they're waylaid by a large branch. Sandra finds a sign indicating their proximity to Camp Blood, which resides at the same lake. Back at camp, the counselors are gathering, and plenty of tomfoolery is afoot. He looks pretty confident for a grown man wielding a slingshot. And during orientation, which includes the sage advice of staying clean during menstruation, Ginny rolls up late, pissing Paul right the hell off. He pauses the talk to go dress her down, indicate they already have an established relationship, and then rejoin the group. That evening, they gather around the campfire for ghost stories and roasted mallows. Paul's story gives them all background about Jason, which he takes to be an urban legend, and is punctuated by another prank. Back at the cabin, they're engaged in a variety of activities including grab-ass, electronic sports, and arm wrestling. And when Ralph creeps on Ginny and Paul later, he finds himself strangled by barbed wire before ever really getting a chance to freak anyone out. There are tons of activities the next day: physical training, eating, chainsawing. When everyone goes to relax in the water a bit, Jeff and Sandra sneak off to check out Camp Crystal Lake. As they wander the woods, they find a mangled mammalian vertebrate of some type, possibly Terry's dog Muffin, and then they are confronted by the police. He has a heart-to-heart with Paul about the importance of staying away from the camp, and heads off satisfied that he has thoroughly asserted his authoritative dominance. He stops his car when he sees a figure slip off into the woods, and he gives chase. He bounds through the high brush like a gazelle, before eventually requiring an extended respite. Psych! Plenty of gas left in the tank as he arrives at this shanty in the woods. He takes a look around and notes the amenities. Not much, but it affords a degree of solitude. He eventually discovers the man cave, but has only a moment to admire it before taking a claw hammer to the back of the head. After dinner that evening, most of the counselors head off for one last night on the town, with only a few stragglers remaining behind. Terry decides to go for an evening walk/skinny dip in the murky waters. While vulnerable, Scott charmingly absconds with her clothes, forcing her to follow the trail toward his lair. However, before he's able to finish his master plan, he's caught in a trap. While hanging out, he gets a visitor to keep him company and courteously help him open his neck up. Meanwhile, Terry finds the smallest knife possible, which ultimately doesn't matter because he's dead, and soon so is Terry. At the bar, Ginny applies some of her child psychology expertise to the Jason mythology to give it some concreteness, but the fellows aren't buying it. While back at camp, everyone is pairing off and preparing for evenings of sensuality. Vicky goes to her cabin and puts on her sexiest sweater along with her special satin chones before going to brush her teeth. Mark goes onto the patio to look for her as the storm sets in. Unfortunately for him, he gets macheted in the face and sent down the stairs before she manages to return to him. Slightly more lucky are Jeff and Sandra, who manage to reach climax but only momentarily enjoy the afterglow before being double penetrated by an errant spear. Back at the towny bar, things are getting sad, so Ginny and Paul head back. Vicky looks for her friends at the cabin and gets a double surprise before being unceremoniously kitchen-knifed, making for an unusually quiet and disordered cabin upon Ginny and Paul's return. The only remnants of the counselors they find are pools of blood, and like always, given the prank-heavy nature of some of these assholes, this isn't enough to fully raise the alarm. The lights go out, and then they try to get the phone working. In a cool reveal, Ginny slowly realizes that they're not alone in the room, and Jason emerges from the shadows to scuffle with Paul. Jason pops up and Ginny runs off into a bathroom with no lock apparently, and when Jason busts through the window, she finds herself in a kitchen that has a lock, of course. They go back and forth like this, and in an early moment of vulnerability in the series, Jason gets narded hard. Ginny manages to temporarily avoid Jason by hiding under a bed, but when she wets herself, it alerts him to her presence. She comes out underneath of Jason, ready to strike, saved momentarily by the fact that Jason is too thick for this chair. Ginny finds herself in Jason's shanty and, using her psychology expertise, puts on Pam's bitchin' cable net in the hope of calming his murderous blood rage. It only works temporarily, but Paul arrives and distracts Jason by smashing his face repeatedly into his fist, which gives Ginny the opportunity to separate his shoulder with a machete, effectively preventing him from killing anyone else. Paul and Ginny make it back to a cabin to recoup and are given a surprise by Muffin and Jason. We end up with another final scene that leaves the ultimate outcome somewhat vague. And that's Friday the 13th Part 2, the first appearance of Jason. I hope you enjoyed the video, and thanks for watching.